to a rather different, rather nerdy edition of GBGuns. What you see here is quite a variety of magazines, and it's not even all of them that are out there. I wanted to help people understand why some mags work with some guns and not with others, and vice versa, and why your buddy might have great luck with TorkMags, but they don't run on yours, etc., etc. So I took all of these mags and busted out the calipers and made some measurements. I looked at a couple things. So the mag catch here, they all have different width, height, and depth. And that impacts how it works in your gun. And I'll show you how. So depending on your catch and how you have it installed, the height, that is vertically how much space there is on this catch here, determines how high or low the magazine is going to sit and present the bullet to be fed. That width impacts some of the wiggle room front to rear for things to be inconsistent and set the wrong feed angle. And then the depth allows how deep or shallow your mag catch is going to grab onto the magazine, which can impact how easily a magazine drops out. It can also impact the force needed, so you're talking your reload speeds, or the chance of the magazine getting bumped out. So all of that depends on the depth of that little catch there, and they can be quite different from one magazine to the next, and I'll show you the data that I have on those. So looking across this, and these are organized from shortest to tallest, you can tell that it's generally about the same. I mean, we're talking about minuscule differences from one company to the next. I do want to admit right out that my sample size was 1. Some of these magazines are newer than others. Some have had a lot of use. Some of them have been hardly used. So now that that's out of the way, also that I'm using an inexpensive caliper, let's get on to the information we found. The height, the total gap there, as I said, can affect how well a magazine is going to set up for the initial feeding height. We looking at ATI, there's quite a bit of height there. That probably means this magazine is going to be the most versatile in running across different platforms. That being said, the magazine catch height is generally the same across all brands. I mean, that gap on your receiver is in the same spot pretty much every time. Mil spec is mil spec. What could be different though is the catch itself that you're using and how wide that fits. But it looks like, for the most part, I'd say these are insignificant differences. Now we're looking at the width of that mag catch cutout in the magazine, and one thing that stuck out to me right away, if you look at those that are narrowest, is C Products D&H, NHMTG, my government issued OK magazine, and the civilian market OK magazine. Those are all metal mags. So I found it interesting that those were the narrowest of them all. And your latest production, I guess you could say more trendy polymer mags, ETS, Troy, and Mission First Tactical, are the 3 that were the widest. So I don't know what this trend is about. It is interesting that the 2nd gen PMag, Daniel Defense, and the ProMag were all pretty much the same. What I can assume from looking at this is that your metal mags are going to have the least potential forward to rearward wiggle. Of course, that totally depends on how tight your catch is and on whether or not your catch is reaching the maximum depth of that catch spot on the magazine. So let's take a look at that depth. Here's our catch depth measurements. You can see the 5 on the right end have nothing to them. That's because those are our metal mags that don't have a backing. The cutout just goes straight into the body of the mag. So looking at the left end, ATI, ProMag 40, the TorkMag 35, and the Lancer being our shallowest, those are going to drop out quick and easy, but they're also going to have the full tension of your mag release, regardless of how tight or loose you have that. So that's going to be where you're going to get, most likely, your minimum amount of wiggle without having to put a lot of force on the magazine. Also some interesting differences here. Once again, looking to the right end, Daniel Defense, H&K, and ETS being the deepest. The other experiment I did was to look at magazine feed lip width. Right, so how broad this is across here. I measured going straight across where the rim of the cartridge is, right through there, on all of these magazines while they were empty. I then measured with a 50% load. Why 50%? Well, because there's a lot of magazines, that's a lot of ammo, and quite time consuming. So I went to half, figuring that was enough to put pressure on here, and looked at how much the lips widened. If you've ever had a magazine fail on you, it's usually because the lips have split too far and the rounds just kind of fall out. That, or sometimes they will crack. In the Army, with old mags like this one here, which is one of my GI mags from Afghanistan, 12 years ago now, we used to take the stripper clip pieces and use them to bend and tighten up those mag lips when they got a little too loose. That's kind of a forgotten art, long gone with polymer magazines, obviously, because we can't reshape them. Some of them have a metal reinforcement on them, like the Lancer. And I wanted to see how much that helps and doesn't help. So I measured right after we loaded. I measured 24 hours later, 48 hours later, and then at the time of this filming, 1 week after loading it. And wanted to see how much that changed. Now, this may or may not be important to you. If you load your magazine and then use it immediately, not a big deal. But if you load mags and leave them stored loaded for a long time, it might not feed as well for you after that week as it did right away. Of course, there are several factors to this, including the springs, the followers, all of that. So this isn't the one and only answer to it, but there is some interesting data looking at those catches. Once again, to give you a demonstration, let's take that Troy, right, insert it in here. Got a little bit of vertical, a lot of front and rear. Comes out rather easy. Taking the H&K, not much vertical at all. It locks rather tight, but more front to rear. See what I'm getting at? We do our C products. A lot of front to rear, not a lot of vertical. So each magazine is going to behave a little differently and present its own unique opportunities to either work or fail. Let's take a look at that data. So immediately after going to 50% load, and I chose 50% because not all of these were 30 round magazines. We had a 20 round, a 32 round, a 35 round, a 40 round in there. This is the lip Swell, so the loosest lips, if you will. And I was shocked to see all the way on the right there that the Lancer actually opened up the most. For a second here, I was a little concerned. I also noticed some of them contract a wee bit. That's what you see over on the left side. I attribute this to the magazine body swelling a little bit, causing the lips to narrow. This really isn't too meaningful, considering that all of these run in my guns anyways, but I thought it might be indicative of what will come in the future. And here's the information that you are wanting to see. With these magazines at 0.5% capacity, or 50% rather, loaded for a week, how much did the lip width change? What we're looking at is a difference in measurement between when I first loaded them to half capacity and a week later. Our winners, Daniel Defense, CAA, the ProMag Gen 2 and Gen 3, ATI, Mission First Tactical, and ETS. Once again, with those negative numbers, that's probably the body swelling a little bit, so the lips getting narrower. But I would say our losers for sure are the civilian OK Industries, C Products, Master Molder, and Troy. Let's take a look at the consistency across the board. So there's a lot going on with this chart. Hopefully you're looking at this from a computer or a tablet, something where you can really read all of this. What I wanted to see with this chart is how much total change there was. Look all the way to the left. The Gen 3 PMags, very consistent. Our C products had quite a bit of swell all the way to the right. The Lancer Mag seemed like it was going to explode in comparison. Keep in mind that this is a difference of 0.02 of an inch, so maybe not that big of a deal, but looking at it on the scale, the Lancer got huge after first loading and then began to contract back to its normal spot, which makes sense considering that those metal lips probably had a memory and it wanted to come back to that. Once again, ATI, CAA, Daniel Defense, Mission First Tactical, all did very well, having minimal change throughout the time. The ProMag 40 over on the right side looks like it was starting to give up as it started to get wide. Same thing with the C Products magazine. It was given up at the end of a week. Hopefully this helps you make a decision as to how you want to treat your magazines and what magazines you use. I'd say that all of these magazines are fine for going to the range, loading it that day, using it that day. Some of these magazines, though, I would not want to leave loaded for long periods of time, whereas others I'm more likely to trust. Hopefully this helps. Thanks for watching.